Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about walnuts. I'm actually standing underneath a black walnut tree here on my farm right now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this tree, the nut, the uses of this tree, and the nuts that we've historically had in this area. But before I do that, I ask that you go in, you hit that like and subscribe button, leave a comment, let me know if this is the kind of thing you enjoy. If you have any questions, drop those there as well. If there's something that you would like to see me discuss, whether it be hunting or farm life or gardening or whatever it may be, cooking, leave a comment, let me know what it is that you'd like to see, and I will do my best to incorporate that into future episodes. Anyway, let's roll on in here and tell you a little bit more about this tree and its fruit. Just dropped behind me. All right, as I said, I'm standing underneath a black walnut tree here. These trees are native to the eastern part of the U.S. and they are widely common and seen here in the East Tennessee area. This is one of the nuts that comes off of it. As you can see, this one's starting to turn brown. Typically it is when it freshly falls off the tree, it is green. You can begin to start putting a little depression into it, but the trees themselves, they vary in size and shape depending on different factors, whether they're in the middle of a field like this one is. When they're in a field like this, they tend to grow up, create a larger canopy, and they cover more area. This is actually relatively rich soil as well, because in this location we used to feed cattle here, and so the soil is really dark and rich from all the manure from where the cattle stood here and fed for days and days over years of time. If you happen to find a walnut tree in the middle of the woods, a lot of times they're more narrow and tall, and so they don't have a really large canopy. Part of the reason is because they're competing for the daylight with the other trees around them, and soil type also can affect the shape and size of the canopy, the crown of the tree. It can also affect the quality and the flavor and the size of the individual nuts. So not all walnut trees are created equal. Some create bigger, better, more flavorful walnuts than others do. The nut itself has multiple uses. So, first and foremost, it is a highly desired food source for squirrels. So early in the year, squirrels tend to hit hickory nuts, certain varieties of hickory nuts, for example, and then they'll move on to acorns. Well, in the late season, what's usually left is a whole bunch of walnuts. At least that's the case here on the farm. And what I've found is late in the year, after the squirrels have taken care of and eaten all the acorns and the hickory nuts and the beech nuts and different things like that, this is what sustains them throughout the year. So when you get into your late squirrel season there in January, February time frame, a lot of times if you can find a walnut tree, you're going to find squirrels, because they save these to the end of the season, and this is what sustains them. In addition to that, so people can eat the nut itself too. If you've ever noticed, walnuts in stores are extremely expensive. Those are typically the English walnut variety. It is widely considered that the black walnut, and especially wild black walnuts, have a much more desirable and strong flavor profile than those of the English walnut variety. There's some work that it takes to get the nuts out, and I'll go through that a little bit later. But the flavor profile, the desirability of a black walnut oftentimes is far superior to that of the English walnut variety. The nuts themselves also have historically been used for centuries as the key component in creating the tannin to use for tanning of leather goods and animal hides and different things like that. It also is used for staining of wood materials. You can take these nuts and you mix them up in a water bucket, a bucket of water, or a barrel of water, and you create this really thick black soupy brine, and that is what you actually would use to tan leather goods with. You could stain wood materials, furniture, different things like that. The wood obviously is highly desired for woodworking. A lot of the exposed wood that we have in our house when we built it was actually built using black walnut that we lumbered and then had milled here on our farm. And it creates just this wonderful visual appeal because the grain, the color profiles of natural black walnut is just, it's some of the most beautiful native wood that you can get from here in East Tennessee. I mean, your red oaks, your chestnut oaks, they have a beautiful red pop to it, but the dark brown color profile that you get out of the black walnut, it's just a stunning wood that you can see, and it's highly sought after in this area. Actually, black walnut lumber has really skyrocketed in this area. Partially, you know, during the time of COVID it took off, but even before then it was actually starting to go up, and it was some of the higher valued lumber in this area. Anyway, we're going to roll on in. I'm going to show you a little bit more about the nut and how we collect the nuts, how we process them, and then we use them and save them for cooking throughout the year. Alright, so the harvesting of the walnuts part is pretty easy. So when they start turning brown like this, that's when they're getting really close to being ready to be hulled. And by hulling it, that means taking this green part and the fibrous black part between the hull and the actual hard nut itself off. When they're really still fully green like this, that's okay, you can still pick them up. A lot of times the inside of the hull is still kind of a soupy, fibrousy green material, and it's a little bit harder to get clean, but as long as you can push your finger into it and kind of make an indentation, then it's still good enough. I'm just going to go around here, just pick up a bucket full, and they're everywhere. So once again, these are good sized walnuts. These are actually quite large compared to some of the others here on the farm. And as I said, I believe it's because the soil here is so rich. This is a very large older tree, and it just produces a higher quality, larger nut. Anyway, just going to fill up a bucket full here. The ground's covered. I could fill up probably 15 or 20 buckets here. There's a 3-pack. There you go. There's you a picture of if it hasn't quite started to rot yet, then it's got a green fibrousy section there between the actual outer hull and the hard nut. And be careful, because that stuff will stain your fingers. So make sure you're not doing it with some clothes that you don't want to get dirty or stained. Okay, so in just a matter of a minute, we picked up a bucket full here. So the ground's just covered. I'm going to have the kids probably come pick up some more. We've picked up a bunch already in the past week over at 2 other walnut trees that we've got over on the farm, and started processing them. And we're going to take these over to the house, and I will show you the next step in the process, how we do this anyway. Okay, now we're over here in my driveway. We're over here kind of in a little turnaround area. I'm surrounded by buckets of walnuts. So I've got 5 buckets in front of me, and I've got 4 or 5 buckets back here behind me. And then the wheelbarrow here is what we're actually putting the husks in. The wife and daughter have been out here husking these walnuts, so that's why a lot of this stuff's out here. But what you're going to do, and there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do this. This is just the way that we do it. You can take boards and drill holes in them where you can just press the nuts down through them. Some people drive over on them with their cars. I've done it that way before too. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but basically what you got to do is you got to get the husk off the walnut. So we're going to just take one of these here that's, you know, it's starting to turn black all the way through. A lot of them are going to have maggots and different larvae and things crawling through them. That's fine. The nut inside is still good. They're basically just eating this fibery pulp that's inside the husk, between the husk and the shell. So basically just take it, you're going to roll it around a little bit. Well, that didn't work so good that time, but you're just going to basically roll it around. The nut will eventually pop out, and what you got here is you've got your nut with a little bit of the fibery pulp still on it. You've got all of your green husk here with your maggots and everything. Just pitch that in there. Like I said, wear gloves. I'm not wearing them for this demonstration at this point, but so then what you're going to do is you're going to take all these nuts with all this pulp on it, and you're going to throw them in a bucket. And then we're going to move to the next step, which is actually washing and rinsing and preparing these nuts. I've only hulled about half a dozen nuts here. Normally, if we were doing this, you know, just if I wasn't trying to video it and just try to get all the video here done all at one time, then we would hull a whole bucket full like we did the other day and process them a bucket at a time. But what I'm going to do for this video is just kind of speed the whole process up to show you what it's like. So I have hulled about half a dozen walnuts. They're down inside there. So I threw all the green hull and the fibery material into the wheelbarrow that would be dumped. I got a bucket of water here. This is just runoff rainwater that we've collected, so it's not clean water, but it doesn't matter because you're just going to use it to agitate around with these nuts to try to clean them a little bit. So dump this water in here a little bit, and you can see already that water turns black as can be to start with. Take a stick of some sort, this is very, very dark. I mean, it looks like stain. I mean, it looks like, it's dark purpley brown even. I'll try to show you here. So you look down in there, and it's a very dark, and it's got all kinds of stuff floating around. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to dump this water out, and I'm going to add some more and do it all over again. Now there's other ways you can do this. Some people actually take like a spackling mixer. My dad has those. I could have used it. Actually, we were going to use it whenever we did the next large batch, but I just didn't get it. Just take it, agitate it around. Now the water's gone from more of a purpley brown to almost just a muddy color, but it's just basically knocking the stuff off of the nuts here. Take that, and then I'm going to dump that out and move to the next step. Okay, we've got these rinsed off now. Next step is to dry them. There's lots of different ways you can dry them. Some people throw them out in their driveway and just let them sit in the sun and dry. You can put them in bins and containers and let them dry. What I've got is I've been building my daughter a rabbit cage. She's going to start raising rabbits and selling them. And there's no rabbits in it right now, but it's 1/2-inch steel screen, and it works great as a drying rack. The floor of the rabbit cage works great as a drying rack for these walnuts. So I'm just going to take these down here. I'm going to dump them, add them on to the other walnuts that we have down there. Let them just dry naturally. Now we're supposed to be getting rain here in about 24 hours. So what I'm going to have to do is go take all these walnuts that are on this drying rack and harvest them, but collect them off that drying rack, put them inside another container and move them into the crawl space or the basement, so that way all the drying effort that I've put into them the past 3 or 4 days now isn't undone by a rainfall or a storm that's going to come through. So we'll take these, spread these out on the drying rack, and then after they dry for several days, then and they cure, then you're going to be able to start cracking them and harvesting the meat out of the inside of the nut. Alright, so what we've got here is this is the rabbit cage. As you can see, I haven't put a roof on it or the back or the doors or anything, but this 1/2-inch steel screen works really well for drying these nuts. And so what you've got here is you've got these nuts that after we hulled them and we washed them off the same way I did with the others, except larger bucketfuls, then I've spread them out in here. And what you're starting to see is as they dry, you're going to start seeing the kind of the fine detail inside the nut itself. And it's dry. I mean, it's dry to the touch. It sounds different. You don't really have that soft, squishy material on it that you had before. And so I'm going to let these set here till tomorrow evening, and then I'm going to come out, collect all these up, and move them into the basement to let them finish curing, and then we'll start cracking them open and harvesting the meat out of them.